I think it's because they view proximity to whiteness as the definition of success.
Definition of success indeed. I mean, how is the color of your skin a definition for success? Hey, beautiful people, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you for stopping by, supporting your girl on this channel. As you know, credit goes to the creators in these videos. And guys, in today's video, so in the last election, as you know, many people were surprised. Well, let's say surprised. Anyway, let's have it like that. To see a large number of Latinos voting for Donald Trump. So for decades, right, the belief was that Latinos mostly leaned Democrats. But in places like South Texas and Florida, Trump gained massive support, right? Flipping these counties that have been blue for generations. And the reason is not far-fetched. One major reason is something that has always existed in the Latino community. They have this mentality of proximity to whiteness. Like, make it make sense. Is it that those that are not white, is it that they have a lesser, they have a lesser chance of success? Or when as the color of your skin being the determinant for who is going to be successful and who is not going to be successful? Because for centuries, right, we all know the rhetoric. Lighter skin has always been seen as higher status and darker skin meant less power. Guys, let's see what these creators have to say.
Latinos either genuinely consider themselves to be white, or at the very least want white people to look at them as one of the good ones. I'm a first-generation American citizen, but my own father didn't even speak Spanish in front of me because he didn't want me to learn it. Because there's also a lot of self-hate when white people find out that I'm Latino, right? They're often surprised. I'm very aware of how I look and sound, right? You know who compliments me the most about it, though? Other Latinos. My green eyes come from my Salvadorian side. And the history behind why that's in my gene pool is not good. But more than once, I've been told these are my blessing. And if you think I'm exaggerating, watch any Spanish language TV and you're going to see people that look just like me. Because that is what is rewarded and what is held on a pedestal. So when they heard the guy at Trump's rally referring to Puerto Rico as garbage, they didn't take that personally. They nodded along, saying, yeah, they are, but not us, right? We're the good ones. We're just like...
So many Latino Americans voted for Trump really shouldn't surprise anyone, despite the fact that he gained most of his initial political traction off the strength of anti-Latino immigrant sentiment. The reason it shouldn't surprise anyone is because of paintings like this. This is called the Heden Sonjicam. I said that like it's French, but it's not. It's Portuguese. It's Brazilian Portuguese, and the process being depicted here is known as blanqueamento in Brazil. Basically, these two have a child together, and their child is ostensibly white, even though the child's grandmother is a dark-skinned black woman, and the dark-skinned black woman is praising God because her bloodline has been redeemed. Yes, this has to do with the Latino vote in 2024. So Heden Sonjicam means the redemption of Ham. And as some of you may know, the story of Ham was used to help justify the enslavement of African people for a long, long time. Blanqueamiento is also a concept in Spanish-speaking Latin America and often gets tied up with phrases like mejorar la raza, which means to literally improve the race. So what does this have to do with Trump winning? Well, in America, the enslaved African population was smaller than the white population. The indigenous population was continually being expelled or G-worded. And although SA and SV resulted in a lot of mixing to the point where most African Americans are almost 25% white, in Latin America, projects of domination looked a little different. Intermixing had a different connotation, and people were often encouraged to marry someone with the goal of having a child that was lighter than them. Obviously, colorism is not a uniquely Latin American thing, but it's what's being overtly stated. Even in the context of a country like Mexico, where the black population is relatively smaller compared to somewhere like the Dominican Republic, I think there's a really different perspective about how people relate to Europeanness. All the tensions that existed between America and Britain, the bloodlines were pretty direct in a lot of cases. Even to this day, white Americans are pretty white. It's estimated to this day that 70% of white Americans have no African ancestry, and around 1% have Native American ancestry. Not the same for DR, not the same for Mexico, not the same for El Salvador, not the same for any Latin American country you can think of, really. I think even in cases where people are repping their country hard as hell, there is this implicit aspiration to be closer to the colonial center genetically, that is to say, closer to whiteness. A lot of factors can motivate someone at the same time, but the ghosts of a lot of these ideologies are still haunting us to this day. Like, for instance, if I told you that the issue with climate change really comes down to a misinterpretation of Christianity, you might feel like that's a stretch. But when you really break it down, you realize, like, oh, shoot, it's not about the thing. It's the thing about the thing about the thing about the thing.
And it will always be the thing about the thing about the thing about the thing. If we don't dig deep and find the root cause of problems and we allow it to actually affect our future. Because just imagine if Latino community, for those that were legal enough to vote and voted against the self-interest of their community, right? Just imagine if they didn't have that ideology that is a thing of a thing of a thing, and they have dealt with it from the foundation, and they don't think that their proximity to whiteness will make them part of their social class, in quotes, we would not be in this situation. Because some of the Latinos believe that by supporting Trump, they get closer to that social power, they get closer to that protection, right? And many of these Latino men without college degrees, apparently, they liked Trump's talk about jobs, about fighting inflation, which we have not gotten anywhere with. Some of them, many of them are Christians, this Latino. Many of them are Christians, they are evangelical and all of that. And when Trump was speaking about family values and all of that, his promises, I believe it resonated with what they believed in. So, because I'm trying to think that, okay, what exactly made them shift their focus? But the main thing is because of the proximity to whiteness. They feel that they are part of those that have higher class, higher status, right? They don't want to associate themselves with those with darker skin. And now that things are happening, right? That is the finding out season. They are calling on the black community to come and save them from the mess they created. Like, does it make sense to you guys? Let's keep watching.
I had a very interesting conversation with a friend of mine who is Latina. And I asked her something, of course, that we're all trying to understand, which is, why are there Latinos for Trump? And no, she is not a Latino for Trump. I mean, with everything that's happening, the cruelty, the fear, and the way that they talk about immigrants, I said, I just don't understand. And she didn't even have to stop and think about it. And she said, because they are racist. She went on to explain how some of them do not want to be seen as brown and they think they're white. She explained how parts of South America, it's all about class and color. If you have money, you're respected. If you're lighter skinned, you're treated better. So when they come to the US, and they carry that same hierarchy, and they look down on the immigrants working the fields, doing the jobs that nobody else wants, their own people. That's not just sad, that's generational self-hatred, and it pissed me off. My grandparents came here from Italy through Ellis Island. They had nothing. And I could never imagine turning around and saying, nope, sorry, you're not welcome. So if your politics are built on racism, on distancing yourself from your own roots to feel superior, then what exactly are you?
What cracks me up about these Latinos for Trump is they really think that ICE and Trump and everyone else gives a about what they do or don't support. Baby, they do not care. If your skin is a certain color, if your name sounds a certain way, if your accent sounds a certain way, if you look a certain way, they're targeting you. I just saw a video of a guy talking about how he got pulled over. They asked for his driver's license. They tried to run his driver's license. He had a Hispanic last name. He was a white looking dude, but he had a Hispanic last name. And the police officers were trying to run his license and they couldn't find him in the system. So they asked for his social security number. And so he gave it to them. He's like, that's kind of weird. That's never happened before. Like when I get pulled over, they go to run his social security, can't find it. And then the police officer straight up says, you have ICE to blame for this. They went ahead and deleted my man out of the system. And you know what they didn't care about? If he was for or against, et cetera, et cetera. They cared that his last name.
Misplaced anger from some Latino people coming out saying, oh, black people, you need to be out there with us, front line, standing with us in solidarity. We did. We stood with y'all in their voting booth. Black people voted in solidarity against that man. I'm not saying this is not our fight. What I am saying, we stood up for y'all when y'all didn't stand up for yourselves. Matter of fact, let me show you something right quick. This is from American Society, Council of Americas, who got their data from the Associated Press, as you can see right here. 42% Latino voters cast a ballot for Donald Trump. Y'all are house divided. Now, to compare, 81% of black folks voted for Kamala Harris. Actively voted against this, what's happening right now. So I'm not saying don't be upset, but maybe direct it towards your own kinfolk, your own skin folk first. Because we stood with y'all in that.
So much shock with the amount of Latinos for Trump that are now coming out saying we feel so backstabbed, we feel so betrayed, we feel used now that our families are being deported even though they're not criminals. You didn't feel that way when Donald Trump was talking about the Mexican families that he was going to be deporting. You didn't feel that way when he spoke about other minority groups that he was going to be deporting. But now that it's affecting your family, your uncle, your cousin, now you want to cry about it? Now you want to cry crocodile tears? Girlfriend, I don't feel bad for you.
Latinos want to be white so bad. Now, this is a question that a lot of communities tend to ask about the Latinos. Now, while I don't have an answer for the full Latino community, I do have an answer for the Mexican community. Let's take it back to the 1500s when Hernán Cortés invaded Tenochtitlan, modern-day Mexico. And something you need to understand is that it wasn't just Españoles getting off those boats. It was also African slaves. When Cortés and his men took over modern-day Mexico, they implemented what is called the caste system. Have you ever heard the phrase mejora la raza? Yeah, it comes from that. Mejora la raza means to better the race. Better the race means marrying white. And that was implemented over 500 years ago. And yeah, sure, it was 500 years ago. We should get over it and stop being so colorist, classist, and racist. Now, don't get me wrong. A lot of the generations are trying to break this or have broken this type of mentality. Meanwhile, you still have the older generations who do think this way because we still had Españoles and a lot of other European countries come to Mexico during the early 1900s. And these Europeans would walk down wherever there was indigenous or Afro-Mexican and look down upon them, calling them racial slurs like indios, prietos. Have you ever heard indio bajado del cierro? That's a racial slur for our indigenous people because the more indigenous you are, the more away you were from the city, the less class and education you had, and you were considered lower than everybody else. Again, leading back to the caste system, even though it's 500 years later. So why is this still happening and it's 2025? The older generation of Mexicans did go through a lot of prosecutions. Mexican Repatriation Act that happened in the 1920s, Operation Wetback that happened in the 1940s, the wet lines along with the lettuce protests that happened in the 1960s, and even though time and time we've seen again that Mexicans uniting with the black community gets a lot of things done, it's still part of the system to be racist against anybody that is darker than you. And if you're dark, they teach you to go lighter, to aim to be lighter. So if you marry somebody that's lighter than you or white, you're saved. Now, again, I want to emphasize that this is not everybody in the Mexican community. A lot of people have been breaking this mentality, especially in the country of Mexico. The country of Mexico has been more accepting to our indigenous people and our Afro-Mexicans. Mexico has always been a melting pot when it comes to different nationalities and ethnicities. That's why many people are trying to break this thought process that was implemented again over 500 years ago by colonizers. So if you see a Mexican with this type of mentality, it's a colonization mentality that they still have yet to break. This is why it's important to speak on the history that the colonizers tried to erase, to educate one another so the next generations to come know where they come from and they stay united.
Exactly, because I feel that many of these are forefathers, so to say, these are Latino forefathers, were actually ashamed of their ethnicity, ashamed of where they came from, right? After they came to America, some of them were ashamed to even speak their language. In these videos, one of those men said his grandfather or whatever did not even speak Spanish to them, right? And he exactly doesn't even look Latino. Okay, so you can just imagine that kind of ideology imprinted into a young child. So I feel that as parents we should do better, right? Don't be ashamed of your roots. Don't be shy of your roots. Wherever you come from, you should be proud of it. I mean, that was where you originated from. So for these people, Trump offered them strength, right? Economic hope and a way to feel closer to, in quotes, the main group in America. And that was enough for them to just say, oh, yes, let us go with it. So I think the lesson is very simple here. To understand whatever it is that you are being offered, you need to understand your history. You need to understand who you are. You need to understand your identity. And you need to know that the color of your skin is what it is. Don't feel as if you are close to being white, because you are not white. You can never be white. Guys, if you have found value in this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Let me know what your thoughts, views, and opinions are about this topic. And I'll see you in my next video. Please stay safe. It's important. Ciao.